Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Poop, the podcast where we get to the real poop behind the story. I'm your host, Jason Bromley, and with me today is my guest, a beautiful man, a man of action, a man of consequence. He's a writer, he's a history teacher, he's an MMA fighter.
Former.
I've been rolling around on the floor with you before. And I'm not an MMA fighter, but you said I could be one, but I think mostly so you could roll around on the floor and beat me up.
I just wanted to teach you a little bit of jiu-jitsu.
You taught me a lesson that I should not try to spar with someone who claims to be an MMA fighter. You're a member of HEMA. What the fuck is HEMA?
HEMA is a historical European martial arts. So we take the old medieval texts and we use them in modern day, but we use real weapons and modern protective gear.
At my signal, unleash hell.
How did texts equal hitting each other with swords?
Well, we have guys like Fiore, who was a sword master during the medieval era, and he literally wrote the book on how to be a great sword fighter. So we have a few surviving copies of those books, and we have to decode his illustrations and his language into what he was trying to show us. And then we kind of decode that and work from there. We try to recreate the way people really used to sword fight.
Mr. Miyagi says, "You cannot learn the art of battle from a book."
That's why we beat the hell out of each other, yeah.
That was a terrible Mr. Miyagi.
That was pretty bad.
Like my impressions have not been good. No one's commented on them yet, but they're really bad. And I wish that someone would say they're really bad, so I'll stop. I'm just going to keep doing it until somebody complains.
I'm not going to be that guy. I love them. Keep them coming.
You're an infantry veterinarian, I almost said. You're an army vet.
Yeah, I was in the army. I was in the infantry.
You served our country in Afghanistan.
I did go to Afghanistan, yeah.
You have murdered a Taliban?
Murdered, yeah, I mean, they were shooting at me, so.
They shot at you first.
Not always.
Oh my. Okay, moving on. You earned the Purple Heart.
Yeah.
That's like a big deal. I only know because in movies they're like looking through their grandpa's stuff and they find the Purple Heart and they're like, oh, Grandpa won the Purple Heart in World War II.
We call it the enemy marksmanship badge. All it means is, you didn't duck fast enough. You got hit. So that's what that means to us in the military.
There's not a lot of people, though, in this world that can say, I have been shot. Even shot at. But that somebody shot at you and then you got hit.
It does put a different perspective on things. I was actually, I was blown up in a roadside bomb, but...
You were in a bomb!
Yeah, I was in an explosion.
You got blowed up in a bomb.
Pretty crazy. But it does put a different perspective on my day. Like sometimes, I'll come out of the grocery store, something like the bag will rip and the groceries will go all over the place. I'm like, man, what a crappy day. And then I think about it and I'm like, well, nobody's trying to kill me today, so...
A bomb didn't go off and hurt me today.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm on my way home, I can just listen to the radio and enjoy myself instead of scanning the road for bombs and terrorists.
When your wife says, oh, I'm just having a crappy day, I got my period, my back hurts, are you just like, at least a bomb didn't blow you up?
No, my wife gets it because even though, she's young, she went through the whole cancer thing. And so she gets that too. It's like, well, at least I don't have to go in for chemo treatment today. So we get along well in that respect.
So you're the partner of a cancer survivor,
yeah,
as well.
Oh, so all these things you just listed for me, it's kind of neat. You kind of made me sound like a badass, which is very nice of you. But my wife's way tougher than me.
So, I mean, do you guys just wake up in the night screaming?
Not both of us at the same time.
That's good.
However, my wife has woke up before, screaming, startling me awake, and then I woke up and punched a hole in the wall, and then I woke up. Once my hand was in the wall, then I actually woke up.
Right.
And she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, what are you doing? You were the one screaming."
What are you doing? I'm punching a hole in the wall.
She's put up a lot with me. Like sometimes I've woken up and I've just punched her between her shoulder blades. I've put her in chokeholds before. I've kicked her out of the bed. I've gotten up out of the bed and run into walls. I mean, she's put up with everything you can think of, and she still sticks around. So I think I'm doing something right.
This is Sparta!
She should wear hockey pads to bed.
She should wear something to bed. Yeah, it's dangerous.
My God. Well, based on all this, you are the perfect person to have on the podcast today to be talking war movies.
I don't watch a lot of current war movies. I don't go and like.
Why wouldn't you enjoy a movie like that, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, watching American Sniper was like a little too close to home. Watching the trailer for it, and I was like, I'm just not going to go see that. Why put myself through that? I liked, if I'm going to go sit down in front of a screen, I want to be happy or rewarded at the end. I don't want to come out of there going, man, I remember what that was
How
like.
bad does that suck that you just go to watch Iron Man 2 and next thing you know, you're choking out innocent people in a theater because the Hurt Locker trailer came on?
Well, I don't choke out innocent people while I'm conscious. That's only usually while I'm unconscious, although I have choked a few people while I'm conscious. They were definitely not innocent, though.
Thank God that you don't drink.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I wouldn't be around you.
I am an asshole. When I used to drink, I don't anymore due to a really bad allergy, which is probably more of a blessing than a
It's
curse.
the blessing for all of us.
Right.
Really, it's
Right.
made you fit into society a lot better.
Yeah, looking around at my family, which is full of alcoholic veterans, and I look around at them and I go, yeah, it's probably a good thing I can't have a beer right now.
Have you ever waterboarded yourself for fun?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No, you get very bored when you're in the Army. You do a lot of different things to pass the time. You don't have things like smartphones or the internet or whatever. So think way back to what you used to do before that, before your creativity was killed by your smartphone, checking Facebook every 2 minutes. We line each other up in a tent. We waterboard the hell out of each other to see what it feels like. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, it sucks. But then again, my mindset was, after this, I'm just going to get up and do it to somebody else. Like, my mindset wasn't, oh, crap, I'm a prisoner of war. But at the same time, like, if you're going to torture somebody, waterboarding is really not that bad.
Every man dies. Now every man really lives.
So what you're saying is the Taliban are a bunch of wusses.
Well, again, like I said, I was not a prisoner of war thinking, oh, what's next? This is my appetizer to what comes next. Although I do not advocate for torture. I don't think it gives you a true answer. Anybody, once they're being tortured, they'll say anything to make you stop. So I think there's a lot better ways to do it. We used to go around to people when we wanted information. We used to hand out money. I used to carry cash on me all the time and say, hey, tell me about those guys. Give me some money. Or here's some money. And they tell me everything I wanted to know. Or we'd say, look, you're not going to make it out of this. We caught you red-handed. You're screwed. But how about your kid goes to college? How about that? How about I set your family up so your kids aren't going to be screwed after we take you over to Guantanamo or wherever you're going to go?
That's the shit they don't show you in movies.
And that's the shit that works. Once you tell that guy, like, I can secure your family's legacy and I can take care of your kids even though you know you're about to bite the bullet, he'll be a lot more cooperative. Yeah, that's much more effective than torture in my experience.
You should write a book.
I just finished a book. My book called A Pit of Wolves. It's about Rome. It is set during the end of the Roman Republic. It follows a character that I came up with named Ovidius, but he is a friend of Julius Caesar. So it follows the Julius Caesar story, and it's in a way that has never been told before. I have it out to beta readers right now, and then once I get their feedback, I'm going to polish it up, and then I'll see who wants to publish it.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
if you're a publisher and you're listening to this, I can personally vouch. This guy's an amazing writer. I've read some of your stuff, some of your westerns.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
And I love the way that you can mix fiction with actual historical fact. And
That's my
so
goal.
good.
Is I read a lot of historical fiction, and I see a lot of people, and even in the war movies, where, yeah, they wanted to use history, but then when it was inconvenient, they got rid of the stuff that was inconvenient. And in my mind, that's not how the story needs to be told. So I'm a history teacher. So I wanted to teach people history, but I also wanted to make my story really good. And the thing is, you don't have to get rid of anything from history to make the story really good. One of the movies we want to talk about today is Gladiator. That has an amazing historical background behind it. Commodus, the emperor, Marcus Aurelius, his father before him. He's one of the last great emperors. Commodus, his son, was a failure. But Marcus made sure he was going to be emperor. It wasn't like in the movie where Marcus says, oh, this general named Maximus is going to take over for me and you're not going to be emperor. It was actually the opposite. Marcus Aurelius was adopted by the emperor before him specifically to take his place. And that's what the emperors had been doing. The last 4 had been doing before him. They've been setting the precedent of choose the best guy. Don't just choose your son. And Marcus Aurelius, for all of his genius, that was his mess up. He could not imagine passing off the title to anyone else other than his son Commodus. Even though it was very apparent Commodus didn't want the role, he wasn't ready for it, he wasn't interested in politics, he wasn't interested in being a general, he wasn't interested in anything but his immediate pleasure. So Marcus forced it on him. When he passed away, he wasn't murdered. He passed away, and Commodus took over, immediately ended the war in Germany.
Am I not merciful?
That battle we see at the opening of Gladiator, that's actually the Marcomanni War. Different tribes in Germany being defeated piecemeal by Marcus Aurelius, who took him about 10 years to complete that, maybe a little longer. The opening battle scene in Gladiator is awesome, I think. I think it's one of the best battle scenes that they show, where they show the Roman siege equipment. They're not just fighting with swords, they're hitting them with arrows, they're hitting them with Greek fire, they're launching all this stuff at them. Then they show their very disciplined lines. There's a lot that they don't show. The Romans, they took over the world and they did it with military precision. So they don't show everything in that movie, but then right after that is where it goes off the rails historically. And when Commodus came back to Rome, he did throw 100 days of games, and he did compete in those games, which is why I say you didn't have to veer off from history at all.
Right.
Commodus was really a nut job who did want to compete in the games.
Right.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
So he got a gladiator trainer, this guy named Narcissus. He made the guy train him, and then
So he wasn't even trained before
No.
he set all this up?
he had
was just-
been under his father's thumb. He had been trained as a politician, as a general, but not as a fighter. And all he was about was having sex with beautiful women, eating good food, drinking lots of wine. That's all Commodus cared.
And that's an awesome life. Why would you ever want to ruin that by fighting?
It's an awesome life if you're not responsible for 25% of the world's population.
Well, that's the thing, too. That's got to be like a real mind fuck.
Especially when you're that age. I think he was in his early 20s. I don't remember exactly how old he was, but he was very young to take over that much. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I'm surprised that people even let me have a car or an apartment of my own. Like, I was so irresponsible.
Seriously, like I shouldn't have even owned a PlayStation
Right.
because I didn't take care of it properly.
They let me join the military at 18. Like, that was rape by the government.
Right.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing, and I had no idea.
The average 20-year-old should not be able to rent a car.
Right.
And this guy was in charge of most of the known world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Why? I don't know the story behind. I know that the fall of Rome,
Mhm.
and that they were a huge empire. Why did Rome want the whole world? Who even wants that?
So the Romans always had this line of, well, we conquered the world in self-defense. They never wanted to admit that they were an aggressive people, even though they were. So it was always like, man, we're having trouble with our neighbors to the north. If we just conquer them, we'll settle that down. Well, okay, once you conquer them, now you've got new neighbors to the north. And guess what? They're going to give you trouble. And that was Rome's justification. What really caused it was, during the Republic era, you had to compete for that top job of being consul. It was the biggest honor in the city. 2 men could hold it once for a year, and then you couldn't run again for 10 years. So it created this crazy winner-take-all type thing where when you were a general, when you got a position to command an army, you better make a name for yourself. So you saw all these guys that were trying to make political names for themselves, just conquering places. And then they could come back to Rome and say, look, I added this new province to our empire, and glory and wealth and slaves and gold and all these things. Now vote me for consul. So that's why their empire, and the real reason their empire grew so fast. Once they become an empire, once they stop that election cycle, once they start having emperors, they almost entirely become a defensive empire where they're just guarding their borders. They pretty much stop expanding after that because there's no more ambition to.
Right.
Whereas before that, it was, well, I have to go find a new place to conquer or else I'm not going to get any votes.
Well, and once you get that land, they obviously didn't just go peacefully.
No.
How do you hold that land? How do you have enough soldiers to keep fighting and keep expanding, but yet hold the territories you just took over?
So that's the conundrum for every single empire out there. The way the Romans tried to solve it was, let's give our veterans, which to be called a veteran back then, you had to serve 25 years initially, then it was shortened to 20, but 25 years, then we're going to give you a plot of land, and that's going to be your retirement. There's no 401k, there's no retirement system like that. But you serve long enough, we'll give you 20, 30 acres of land. You can set up a farm on it, you can sustain yourself, and you can sell crops.
Back then, though, at 25 years, what? You got 5 years of life left before your life expectancy is over?
No. The life expectancy at the time, is very low. We see that low number, but it's because half of kids didn't reach the age of 10. So it was really because it was so dangerous and deadly to be a kid during that time. When you were first born, it was just such an iffy thing. It was like, man, is this newborn going to make it? We've already had 2 kids. Yeah. Are we lucky enough to have a third survive? And most families, weren't. They didn't have all their kids survive. Accidents happen. Disease happens. They didn't have vaccinations back then. They didn't have doctors like we do. So when you see the mortality rate of like, oh, their average life expectancy was 35 or 40 years old. Well, it's because so many died during being a kid. If you make it past 10, now your life expectancy is like 65.
Because luckily, once you're 12 or 13, then you can join the army and go get hacked up by swords of another nation.
Yeah, they did want you to be a little older than that. But yeah, once you were done being a kid, you had a much higher chance of just surviving for the rest of your life.
Where was the part where they just got to like smoke weed under the stairs and like finger bang the prom queen? When did you get to do that back then?
That was high school. Oh, for them.
For them, yeah, not you personally.
Sorry. Well, the Romans don't mention cannabis a whole lot, although the Egyptians do a little bit.
Damn! All you do is smoke weed.
What?
They
The Egyptians had weed?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where do they grow weed in the desert?
Oh man, you have the wrong concept of Egypt. You got to think of the Nile River. It's one of the most fertile places in the world. It's so green there by Alexandria in that northern part of Egypt near the Mediterranean. It's a beautiful, lush area. That's how a lot of the Middle East is, and people just don't realize it. Iraq was the booming epicenter of agriculture and medicine and science and culture before the Mongols came through, and they completely they said Iraq still has not recovered from what the Mongols did to it.
Right.
They basically let their huge flock of horses destroy it. But no, the Romans, if you weren't in the army, your life could be chill. You could be a merchant. You could be a politician. Now, politician, you had to be, just like today, upper 1%. You got to be wealthy. In Rome, you did not get paid for being a politician, so you had to be wealthy enough to sustain yourself for that year in office.
Well, and apparently you also have to be ready to compete in battles of life and death to be respected as a politician.
Absolutely.
You can just be a windbag.
No, if you're a patrician, so there's 2 different classes in Rome. If you're a patrician, you're in the upper class. If you're a plebeian or a pleb, you're in the lower class. If you're a patrician, once you're 13 or 14, you're expected to go start learning in the army and to start seeing how things work. Because when you're 20, 21, you're going to be in charge of a unit. When you're a little older, you're going to be in charge of an army. And that's what your family expects of you. So you better learn how to do it. Do it right. Now, Rome has just as many lost battles and failures as they have victories because of that same system. That same system produced Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus and all these great generals, but it also produced terrible generals that had no idea what they were doing, thought they were going to win a great military victory and score some political points, and instead they got everybody massacred. So Romans have plenty of history of that too. That's kind of what was going on in Germany when Commodus said he wanted to end the fighting there. They'd lost 3 legions up there hundreds of years before, or 100 years before, but they never really could get over the Germans. They've been fighting them for too long, teaching them their tactics for too long, and the Germans had wised up to it.
It's always the fucking Germans. Why haven't we got rid of the Germans?
They were a scary people back then, but
They're scary people now.
that's true. It's true.
They're just laying low right now, dude, and they're listening to this podcast on their freaking little spy cams and stuff, and they're like, they're on to us.
Angela Merkel, please don't kill me if you hear this. Big fan. So Commodus comes back to Rome, and it was his father, Marcus Aurelius, who got rid of gladiator games. He got rid of them altogether because he was a philosopher. He was very stoic. He's got a great book out that's still read today in Latin classes.
Still in the New York Times bestseller list.
I don't know if it's on the bestseller list, but it is all about his philosophy, and it's a great book. Commodus, very opposite. He comes home, and then he kicks off 100 days of games to honor his father, to honor the guy that got rid of him. And then, like I said, he decides he's going to take part in these games.
That's kind of like my mom buying me a bowling ball for my 16th birthday.
Hey, my brother got married on my 16th birthday, so...
Oh, man. Way to steal your thunder.
I know. Well,
Jeez.
He was also in the military, came home, got married, and then had to go back. So he gave me his car to watch while he was gone. So I was like,
that's kind of a nice gift.
I did him a great favor, and I got into 2 accidents with it. So
Oh, gee, sweet guy.
really, really took care of that thing.
Yeah. I kind of feel like you're the kind of guy that's like, seatbelts are for pussies.
No, I don't. No, I don't think I'm tougher than an automobile accident, or I'm stronger than the pavement or something. No.
Let's see what happens when I hit this wall.
I think we have too much experience of working in the hospital and watching people get wheeled in and going, "Oh my God, what happened to him?" It's like, yeah, he wasn't wearing a helmet. Like, yeah, holy shit, I can see his brain.
That is why I always wear a helmet when I rode my motorcycle.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So Commodus takes part in these games, and it pissed the Roman people off. They were like, "That's our emperor. This is like a president competing in the UFC." Because gladiators.
I would love to see Trump in the UFC.
Yeah, obviously, that would be great. But,
Trump versus Floyd Mayweather. That'd be good.
Mayweather.
Mayweather.
Floyd I don't know. I would like somebody who hits harder than Mayweather.
Conor McGregor, maybe
Harder. I want a heavyweight. I want like Trump versus Stipe Miocic. Trump versus like Alistair Overeem. Just someone who can just like really knock some teeth out.
Just knock the wig right off his head.
Knock that spray tan off.
Can you imagine they just hit him and the glove is just covered in orange after
Gross.
Just orange and McDonald's grease.
Melting the glove, yeah.
Just cheese comes out of him.
They say like that guy, he has this weird theory about exercise. Like if you exercise, you stress yourself out and then you die sooner. So I've never exercised a day in my life. Like,
no.
What?
Yeah. You can tell when his wife Milana like holds his hand, she's just repulsed.
She looks terrified.
She's just repulsed by the fact that she has to hold him. And then once a year on his birthday, she fucks him. And she just lays there and waits for it to be over. And you can just imagine he just kind of lays on top of her, sweaty and breathing hard. And he's like, "Oh, I don't want to stress myself out too much."
How terrible is it to be his wife right now while he's just... I mean, the news story just broke that his own lawyer recorded him talking about paying off Playboy models. And you're like... You have to be the first lady. You have to go out and put on a brave face while your husband is talking about paying off banging models.
Oh, yeah. You know, she doesn't sleep in the same room with him. No. She can hear him in the other room laughing and watching his pee-pee tapes with him and Putin peeing on some whore's face. And he's just like... and she's like, "Oh."
Yeah, I do. I feel really bad for her. Especially when you hear that, like, on election night, he had told her, like, "Don't worry, we're not going to win. Everything's going to be fine. Like, this will all be over soon. I'm going to get my own news station, and I'm going to be like a broadcaster." And, like, that was his plan. He didn't expect to win. He didn't even expect to win the Republican primary. But
it's a good thing he won, because he would have got taken down by the Me Too movement had he not become the president.
That is amazing. He has dodged that bullet. There's what, like 18, 19 women that are like, "Yeah, he sexually assaulted me and admitted it on video."
Yeah.
And people are still like, "Well, I guess it's a case of he said, he said."
Like a week before he got elected, he was grabbing pussies on air.
When I heard that TMZ tape, I just was like, wow, this campaign's over. It was like, election's over.
Yeah.
Dude, you're talking about grabbing women by the pussy. It is done. There's no way people can say, like, I have strong Christian conservative values and still vote for you. And then...
He could compete in the Olympic Games and still not be able to wash that away.
It's bad. Yeah. No, there's definitely people out there who just don't care what he does.
I know. Well, we kind of got off topic.
Yeah, sorry.
We got all political too. That's not what I want to be in this podcast.
Well, back to Commodus. So he's our emperor. He was a figurehead to the Roman people. They looked up to him. You got to remember, like, Augustus and Caesar. Augustus had them deified as gods. So after the emperor dies, he gets a temple built to him. You start praying to him. Now you have this guy that's in the arena doing what slaves do. Now, these aren't normal slaves. These are more like our modern-day UFC fighters. They're not as they are portrayed in the movie, where they're just bought, given a very little training, and then just thrown into a random match. That's not how things went. These guys are an expensive investment. You don't just want your gladiators dying left and right.
Do any of them fight? I got a match coming up. Some are good for fighting, others for dying. You need both, I think.
They were bought because of their physique or because of their past. Like, all right, we got a big, strong guy here. Let's buy him. Get him in this gladiator school. Very expensive, very wealthy thing to do. Take your guys to gladiator school. Get him set up there. After he's had months and months of training, then we'll put him in the ring. And then what happens is he's going to wear armor, and he's going to have a certain set of weapons based on what his strengths are. And he'll either be put against someone that's wearing the same stuff and going with the same stuff, or it'll be the like opposite of that. So you give somebody a short sword and a shield to go against somebody with like a net and a spear. And you want to see like, how do they solve that puzzle? And there's betting. Everyone knows the games. Everyone knows who's going to be facing each other. We have these tiles that archaeologists have recovered that say, Marcus with spear and net versus Tiberius with sword and shield. And then people will go and bet on this.
If I get 2 weapons and one of them's a goddamn net, I'm going to be real upset. I'm going to feel real shortchanged.
More effective than you would think. But yeah, you do have to use it right, and you get 1 chance.
Right.
If you throw that net and you maybe like tangle up part of my arm and you don't get me all the way, like I'm going to kill you.
Right.
For sure.
You find yourself alone, riding in green fields with the sun on your face. Do not be troubled, for you are in Elysium, and you're already dead!
So the Romans didn't really care who was in charge as long as they had peace and stability. By the end of the Republic, they had so much civil war and they were so fed up with that even though they didn't have elections anymore and they didn't really have even a partial voice in their government like they used to, they were just like, man, let's just be done with these generations of civil war and people getting killed and Romans getting killed and Romans killing Romans. Let's be done with it and just have one person in charge. They were all on board and they were fine with that. So there was no, let's go back and turn this over to a republic. This is what the people want, freedom and blah, blah, blah. That's just us putting our Western democratic ideals on that movie. It's more efficient to have one guy in charge. It just sucks if that guy's an idiot. Right. And that's the roll of the dice, and that's why Marcus Aurelius should have never let Commodus be in charge, is because he was adopted himself. The emperor before him, Hadrian, I believe Hadrian was the emperor that adopted him, recognized Marcus Aurelius for his intelligence and his gifts and his cunning, and brought that gift into politics. But Marcus Aurelius couldn't do the same thing. He had to force it on his son, who didn't want it, and it was not a good thing for the empire.
And then it crumbled.
Eventually it would split and then crumble. The western half would crumble. The eastern half would stick around for a long time.
So Rome was not built in a day.
No.
How long did it take for it to crumble?
That's one thing that historians still debate, is when did Rome really start going into a decline and why? And one big thing that happened during Marcus Aurelius's, that was going on during his reign, didn't start during his reign, was the plague.
Bring out your dead! I'm not dead! I feel happy!
That came in from the east. The Romans, they were in the east, they were in the Middle East, they were in Syria, they were in Egypt, all those countries over there, they were in Jerusalem, and they were just a little too close, I think, out of their normal areas, and a lot of trade coming through there, and they got hit with this nasty plague that made its way back to Rome and killed a lot of people, and that was a big reason why they fell. They lost a lot of manpower, they lost a lot of discipline in their military, they started hiring way too many mercenaries who were mostly Germanic. They would hire these Germanic guys, they would teach them the ropes and then say, okay, now you're in charge of this whole unit. Well, once that guy's contract is up, he's going to go back to Germany and teach his friends that stuff. That's why the Germans were so tough. They didn't fight, and like you see in Gladiator, they're kind of a disorganized mob that just rushed the Romans. They'd learned the shield wall by then. They learned formations by then. They learned discipline by then. Combine that with how big they were much bigger than the Romans, and their natural savagery and that warrior mentality, which the Romans had as well, made them a really fearsome enemy. The barbarian tribes the Romans faced before that, they were able to overrun them before they really caught on to their tactics. So it worked out in their favor. But if you're rubbing elbows with another civilization for too long, they're going to pick up the good things you do, and they're going to combine it with what they do, and that'll be the end.
And then they're going to send you back with herpes.
Herps. Yeah, you got
Yep.
the herps now.
That's how Vegas is going to fall.
It's true.
Because they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but people leave Vegas with them herpes.
Now there's that strain of super herpes or whatever. Jesus.
There's super herpes? I haven't even heard about this.
Never.
Herpes are pretty super on their own.
Yeah, you'd think that something that stays with you your whole life is already bad enough.
Yeah.
Now apparently these breakouts are even worse.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, I guess the medicine doesn't help or whatever. But
Well, at least it'll make it harder for you to, like, have herpes and have sex with somebody. They'll
sure, yeah,
say,
stop spreading it. If you have herpes, stop fucking people.
Stop fucking people.
You need to go fuck other people with herpes. Already.
Exactly. It's like a gay bar.
Right. Did you see Dallas Buyers Club?
No, I did not.
That was great. I watched that recently, and Matthew McConaughey's he plays a character who's got AIDS,
Mhm.
and he's working to get medicine for that AIDS, and all the other people that are working with him are all these gay guys. And finally, someone comes to like his clinic, and it's a female. And then the very next scene, they're just fucking. He's like, "You have AIDS?" She's like, "Yeah, you do too." And then boom, they're just going to town.
Yeah, that's like the best dating app. Is the I have AIDS.
I've already got it.
I've already got it. Let's do this. Yeah, open wounds, bring them on.
Spit in my mouth.
I love you. Always have. I want to marry you.
So on the other hand, we have a different type of movie, still historical fiction, Alexander by Oliver Stone. Better example of a director trying to stick to historical details, but it made for one slow movie, one really boring movie.
Yeah, which Oliver Stone is pretty famous for.
Right.
JFK being one like that.
See, and I have the third director's gold edition super long cut at home.
My God.
And that can take me quite a while to get
You
through.
gotta set aside a whole weekend for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. Even in doing that, I mean, there's a lot of things that he misrepresented or that he didn't get right. But there are a lot of things that he worked hard to get right, like the Battle of Gaugamela. That's one of my favorite battles. It's the first really big one that Alexander had against the Persian Empire. I really liked how Oliver Stone showed us through a bird's eye view the armies, and it showed you how outnumbered the Macedonians were. It tried to give you a scope of what was happening, and it labeled where the camera was. You know, it would say, like, this is the left flank, and this is the baggage train, and this is the middle of the enemy army. So he did a really good job in that, because battles are terribly confusing things, especially when the two sides come together. All your plans are gone out the window. So trying to show that through a movie, I thought he did a great job. There are other things that he also tried to show that I think made people uncomfortable, like the sexuality of Alexander the Great.
He almost like focused on that like as a thing, and I don't know if that was to create like titillation to get people to watch it, or
I don't know.
do you think
his
that was?
strategy behind
Do you
that.
think that was really that big of a part of his life?
Oh, for sure. No, for sure. So when we think of sexuality in the past, you really have to get out of your modern day brain. This is the problem with reading history. People have to learn how to put aside their modern notions, their modern preconceived notions. So we have these notions of straight and gay and bi. Whereas in the ancient world, it was the notion of, are you a giver or are you a receiver? If you are an alpha male, if you are a king like Alexander, you are expected to be a giver, someone who is doing the fucking. It is beneath you. No matter who tells you, you cannot be taking it from them. So
You can't fuck a king's butt?
can't fuck a king's butt.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It's his best friend Hephaestion, who we see in that movie, played by Jared Leto.
Jared Leto.
Yeah, he plays Hephaestion in that movie.
Jared Leto's a catcher for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was catching it from Colin Farrell all movie. But it's not gay. So people, the Spartans were gay. Alexander's gay. It's like, well, to them, it's gay to us. But to them, it was.
So it's only gay if you take it.
That's
It's
how they
not
thought
gay
of
if you give it.
That's how they thought of it. Yeah.
But that's gay
To us.
to us.
To us.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. If someone came up to me and said that today and was like, I'm not gay because I only fuck dudes. I don't let dudes fuck me. I'd be like, well, I got bad news for you.
So if I went up to Alexander and I was like, "So, bro, you're gay, right?" He'd be like,
I don't even know if he'd know what that. He would be like,
"Yes, I am a very happy emperor."
He'd just be like, well, I give it to people and nobody gives it to me, so I'm good. and it went like this for a long time. Even in medieval society, it was like Christian men could have sex with, whoever they wanted, even from a different religion, as long as you're the giver. But like a Christian woman couldn't let like a Muslim man have sex with her, because then it'd be like, oh, he was the alpha in that situation. You can't have that.
Right.
So that's how they thought of it. It wasn't gay or straight. And again, going back to the army thing, when you're on these campaigns, his campaign lasted 13 years. You're on these campaigns and you're surrounded by dudes. Dudes start to look pretty good.
Can't you bring a lady
Yes.
with you?
Yes.
If that's your preference.
Now, there is...
Or are there guys that are like, "We're going out to wars"? I
I'm
get to do
sure,
my gay shit."
I'm sure there are definitely guys that are like, man, I can't wait to get on campaign, buddy. But there's always, with every ancient army, there's another group just as big right behind them we call them the camp followers. That's like your blacksmiths and your merchants and your repair people, your farriers, and prostitutes. So there's a big army of prostitutes that would follow that. So it's not just guys having sex with guys, but it was a part of life, and it wasn't considered gay or straight or anything like that. So that definitely turns people off in the movie, and I kind of tip my cap to Oliver Stone for even including that, because I think he knew, like, having a lead gay character makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
At that time, too, I think more so even than now.
yeah, it was definitely more risky at the time. I think now we're more embracing of it, even though it's only been 10 years since that movie came out, maybe more, maybe a few more.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of change.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, it's certainly a lot more tolerance.
Yeah, I
And
remember
it's like a societal forced tolerance.
it's very forced. That's a whole nother issue. But if you're not, yeah, I mean, we're watching. James Gunn just got fired from directing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 because I think I can't remember if it was a racial slur or a...
He made pedophilic remarks.
Oh, okay.
And he made remarks about having sex with kids and having forced sex with everybody. So I wondered, because I kept hearing what
Yeah.
James Gunn gets fired for tweets. So I looked up the old tweets.
And that tweet was, what, 10 years old?
It was 10 years old, and it's written jokey.
Yeah.
Like, you can...
So 10
it's-
years ago, people were probably laughing at that. And
Right.
then it got him fired
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're like, wow. So I think that's how it gets enforced.
Yeah.
Is you will be tolerant, you will be accepting of this, which is not the way to do it. But he sticks to his details where it suits him. He shows the battles really well, except for the battle in India that happened it didn't happen in the jungle. The Greeks knew what monkeys were. I mean, they had an extensive trade network. It wasn't like...
Did he have a battle elephant, though?
Yes.
He had a battle elephant.
They had to fight against elephants, yes. And he did lose his beloved horse Bucephalus at that battle.
Really?
So you have a king who got this horse when he was a boy. The story goes that he was the only one that could tame him. The horse was afraid of his shadow. He turned him around. Every city he conquered and founded after that, he named Alexandria. After that battle, where his horse was killed, he named that city Bucephalus. Yeah, that's something the Macedonians never did, was they never bowed to their king more than maybe just a nod of the head. They did not genuflect. They did not get on the floor and prostrate themselves before a king. But once the Persians started doing that to Alexander, in my opinion, I think he started to He was like, yeah,
How could you not?
I'm a god,
Yeah.
and this is how I should be treated.
Right.
But and then I think he became kind of resentful of the Greeks and the Macedonians. Like, why don't you treat me like that? Why don't you bow to me? Why don't you get on the floor? And he just slowly started to push those guys out.
Nobody can stay in power too long without losing their fucking mind.
No way. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I really believe that. I think the best thing for this country would be term limits on people. Senators and congressmen. Term limits, you've been in there too long, get the fuck out. We need new, fresh ideas in there. And that's where you do go wrong with the king. Like, Alexander is even younger than Commodus. Alexander is 18, and he gets this great gift given to him because his father, Philip the Great, fun fact, they're the only two father-son, dynasty that they both have the great in their names, Philip the Great and Alexander the Great. We would all know who Philip is if it weren't for Alexander. Philip's accomplishments are great.
Thus the name.
That's the name. There you go. But we only focus on his son. But he is the one who initially conquered Greece, unified Macedonia, and fought Persia, and then he gathered the army. Armies don't simply appear with a snap of your fingers. This takes years of planning. You have to have supply dumps along the way. You can't carry everything you need. This stuff takes a long time, and the logistical support is part of the reason like Greeks and Romans are so good at this as compared to barbarians that get their armies together and then they ask the question, oh, how do we feed all these guys? Whereas the Romans and the Greeks, like, okay, one man needs 8 pounds of flour a day times 10,000 men times blah, blah, blah. And they do all that math and they make sure everything's ready before they go. So all of that stuff, including the army, including supplies, was literally gift wrapped to Alexander.
That makes me
as he took the
so
crown.
fucking mad because my math teacher always said, like, math is important no matter what you're doing. And now for you to say that a barbarian even has to fucking do math to be a good warrior just really upsets me.
Yeah, and like I said, like the barbarians didn't really do the math. That was their problem. And that was how people beat them, was going back to the Romans. Julius Caesar ran up into Gaul, was like, wow, there's a 200,000 man barbarian army waiting for me. I guess I'll just hang out till they get really hungry and leave. And that's exactly what they did. They realized, like, we can't feed each other. We don't have enough food hanging around. Let's all go back to our homes. And Julius Caesar picked them off one by one after that. And then the other thing that Oliver Stone shows in that movie is he shows Alexander as, like, he didn't know the strife or the civil war he was going to leave behind when he was dying, and which is not true. When he died, his empire gets split up. Eventually, it's into 3 parts. There's a lot of civil war that goes on to make it 3 parts. But he said his last words were "to the strongest." They said, "Who's your empire go to?" He says, "To the strongest." And in the movie, that he just sort of croaks and dies, and they're all like, "Oh, what do? We don't know what to do now." I think Alexander knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't want anybody to have his empire. I think he was kind of like a jealous kid. Like, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. You can't play with me. He knew he was dying. He was only 33 or 32 at the time, and he didn't want anybody to rule his empire. He built it. He created it, or most of it, and was kind of jealous maybe that he was getting kicked out so early of the game. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing when he said "to the strongest." So to portray Alexander as like, oh, he didn't know so many men were going to die in the desert, and like he didn't know that Civil War was going to follow. He knew. He's a smart guy. He knew. So
Yeah, he wasn't Alexander the Pretty Good. He was Alexander the Great.
and it's the Romans who actually gave him that name. They were obsessed with him, Alexander Magnus. But that's just because the Romans are obsessed with anybody who's good at killing.
Everybody had Magnus in their name back then.
Yeah, that's the Great.
It's because you're the big.
Yeah.
It's the Great.
That's the Great.
Right.
Yeah, so Pompey Magnus was one of the Romans. It was Pompey the Great. And it's because he conquered some of the same places Alexander had. And when you're a Roman general, you just give yourself that nickname.
Right.
Who's going to say no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just going to be like, I'm great.
Yeah.
And you're going to call me that. As a matter of fact, from now on, fuck it. I'm Jason the Great. I'm
Jason the
Jason
Great.
Maximus.
All right, Magnus.
Magnus. Maximus. I want to be big and great.
There you go. And the other movie I wanted to talk about today, and this is, we're bouncing around on the historical spectrum here, but we went from Gladiator, that I think was like a good mix, to Alexander, who's like, maybe they stuck too much to historical stuff and not enough to entertainment.
Right.
And then you swing it all the way to the other end, where now we have Braveheart.
For Madman Mel
Yeah.
Gibson.
Braveheart.
Everybody thinks I'm suicidal, in which case I'm fucked and nobody wants to work with me. Or they think I'm faking to draw a psycho pension, in which case I'm fucked and nobody wants to work with me. Basically, I'm fucked.
Which is not historically accurate at all. I really don't even know where to start with this movie.
Don't tell me the blue paint's not real, man. Don't tell
not
me the
real.
blue paint's not
Not real.
Come on!
The blue paint is not real, I'm sorry to say. That comes from an older tribe in Scotland, northern England, called the Picts, which the Romans fought against at the time. And it's the reason the Romans built Hadrian's Wall across the north of England, separating England and Scotland, although nobody called it Scotland or England back then at the time. So maybe William Wallace's ancestors wore blue paint, although typically the Picts wore it all over their body, not just their face. But yeah, no blue paint, no kilts.
What?
No kilts.
What? So they didn't do the thing where they flashed the other army?
I mean, maybe they pulled down their pants, but there's no kilts at the time. Kilts aren't even invented yet. Yeah,
You're breaking my heart.
I know. I'm sorry. Okay, so imagine this. There's little young Brian Gunn, and he's told by his mom that he cannot watch this movie Braveheart. But then his dad comes and gets him and says, "Son, this is the story of our people. You have to come watch this with me." So over my mother's objections when I was like 5 or 6, my dad shows me this movie. Obviously, I loved it because, you know, the battles and all that stuff, the
Right.
revenge.
It made you who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a madman. A fucking insane person. And then I get my degree in history, and I start researching my Scottish ancestry, and I start looking into it. And I'm basically crying while I'm reading these books about the real William Wallace and Robert the Bruce and Edward Longshanks, and I'm just like, wow, none of this happened. That sucks. It's a great, entertaining movie. It's a typical Mel Gibson movie. There's the guy that's reluctant to fight, who then gets family killed or someone he loves killed, who then joins the fight, gets revenge, and saves the day. And he gets tortured. Mel Gibson's got it. He loves that. So
The torture still happened, though. They tortured William Wallace.
you know
yeah.
what's funny is, like, that's the part that they dumbed down.
Right, because they really
They
fucked up
tortured
William
the
Wallace.
fuck out of William Wallace.
Right, yeah.
They had him hanging from a rope for like a couple hours or something, and
Right.
every time it looked like, oh, he's about to pass out, like, let him down,
Yeah,
string him back up,
right.
let him down, string him back up. And they did this to him for like 2 days before finally cutting all his limbs off, sending them off to different corners. I mean, there's no way that this guy had the energy or breath to be like, freedom!
I heard they cut off his hog and put it in his mouth. Is that true?
I don't know, but I'm sure that that's something they would do.
Yeah.
That's something that Edward Longshanks would absolutely do.
Right.
That's one thing the movie got right, where they show him as like a kind of brutal, sadistic guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's a smart guy, and he's a conqueror, but he was a mean motherfucker too. as far as just throwing noblemen out the window, that's a no-no. You can't just be executing your high-ranking.
Why not? Hey, everybody. So, if it seems like the conversation kind of got cut short right there, it's because it did. First time we recorded this, all of a sudden in the middle of recording, I started getting this strange feedback noise over us talking, like a static, and it's super hard to listen to. So I was like, there's no way we can put that out to our listeners. It's just, we want to put out a professional show. We want it to sound as good as it can sound. So I had Brian Gunn come back into the studio and re-record as best as he could remember what he had said before that, and then we recorded a second part to the Talking Poop War episode. And our sound technician, he took that to France with him. So he's going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. So instead of holding the episode for the next 2 weeks, you're not missing out on that much. You're just the little tip at the end there. Basically, it was that Braveheart is no good and it was all bullshit. Mel Gibson should stick to acting. Beyond that, we said thank you to everybody. Go check out our our hashtags and our Twitters and such at Talking Poop. We're on YouTube now. And I just want to say goodbye and wrap this one up so that we can enjoy the second episode and not have to wait 2 weeks till Sterling gets back to France to hear that last little piece. And we'll just move straight on. Nothing stops us here at Talking Poop. Not technical problems, not things that professionals would fix. I just, put my head in the sand and hope nothing bad happens. And that's what we're doing here. So we're cutting our losses and we're moving on to the second part of our amazing war episode. Things get a little bit serious on this next episode, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So stay tuned for Talking Poop, Going to War, Part 2.